Hello everyone, I'm the Generation Y conservative, and after looking at Donald Trump last week, today we're going to be looking at Ted Cruz. You know, last year I was praying that Ted Cruz would actually get into this race. I've been looking for a constitutionalist, and after watching him in the Senate, I knew that he was a person that I was going for. So when he jumped into the race, I was jumping up and down in the air. So I make it no secret that Ted Cruz is my candidate in this race. You know, I believe that this country has been given two answers to a big question that's been looming for over a decade now. And that is, what is the answer to this overwhelmingly bad liberal influence in this country? And how do we combat the establishment GOP and the rhinos that are in Congress? As I mentioned, I believe that there are two answers that we have been given, and that is Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, the two insurgent candidates in this election. You know, Donald Trump plays on the anger of the American people, anger at the liberal cartel in Washington, and that is Obama's administration. Whether it's Obama himself, his wife jumping into policies like the Child Nutrition Act, Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, and now John Kerry. They keep on mucking things up down in DC, but it's not only them. We also have the Republicans to blame as well, the establishment GOP, and the rhinos, as I mentioned before. So how do we combat those? Well, with Trump, he's also playing on the fear of the American people. Fear that of these Syrian refugees that are coming into this country, that they are infiltrated in high amounts by ISIS members. So that's why he keeps on pushing the Mexican wall, and that Mexico will pay for it. The difference with Ted Cruz is that he believes in the Constitution. He believes in the founding documents. So you have the Declaration of Independence and you have the Constitution. He believes, as I believe, that if we go back and study history and we course correct by using those founding documents, we can get the basic foundation of principles to get this country back on the right track and then move forward. And only until then, until we have those policies in place, can we finally look at some maybe radical ideas to get this country moving again economically, or get it moving again with new ideas to help the economy grow and get people jobs again. You know, one thing that went viral a couple of weeks ago was taking a look at Ted Cruz's actual resume. It's astonishing. People even on the left think that it's an amazing resume. So I just want to take the time to go over some of what I think are the highlights. Ted Cruz graduated valedictorian from his high school. He also graduated cum laude from Princeton University, magna cum laude from Harvard Law School, and in 1992 was a U.S. national debate champion representing Princeton. In 1995, he was the World Debating Champion semifinalist representing Harvard. Now let's think about that for a second going into the general election if he's our candidate. Imagine someone that has these amazing debating awards going up against Hillary Clinton and her lie machine. There is no chance for Hillary to be surviving on a stage with Ted Cruz. It would be a bloodbath. Ted Cruz also served as a law clerk to Chief Justice William Rehnquist, making him the first Hispanic ever to clerk for a Chief Justice of the United States. He served as a Solicitor General of Texas from 2003 to 2008, which makes him the first Hispanic Solicitor General in Texas and the youngest Solicitor General in the entire country and the longest tenure in Texas history. Ted Cruz authored over 80 Supreme Court of the United States briefs and presented over 40 oral arguments before the court itself. In the landmark case of District of Columbia versus Heller, Cruz assembled a coalition of 31 states in defense of the principle that the Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to keep and bear their arms. He defended the Ten Commandments monument on the Texas State Capitol grounds and also defended the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools. He was a director of the Office of Policy Planning at the Federal Trade Commission. Among his awards, he was among America's leading lawyers for business, of the 50 most influential minority lawyers in America, one of the 25 greatest Texas lawyers of the past quarter century, one of the 20 young Hispanic Americans on the rise, and Trapphagen Distinguished Alumnus, Harvard. Now, if that's not impressive enough, let's take a look at some of the impressive legislation he's also been a part of. He's been a part of the Obamacare Repeal Act, the prohibited use of drones from killing citizens of the United States within the United States, the Defund Obamacare Act of 2013. He was part of a bill to amend the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 to permit states to require proof of citizenship for registration to vote in elections for federal office. He was also part of a bill to require the Secretary of State to offer rewards of up to $5 million for information regarding the attacks on the United States diplomatic mission at Benghazi, Libya, that began on September 11, 2012. Now that legislation alone is going to be some type of ammunition to go against Hillary Clinton in the general election. He was also part of the State Marriage Defense Act of 2014, a bill to amend Title 18 United States Code to prohibit the intentional discrimination of a person or organization by an employee of the Internal Revenue Service. Now this one's important because the IRS was actually going after Tea Party groups and Christian groups because of the Obama administration guiding them to. He was part of the Super PAC Elimination Act of 2014, the Free All Speech Act of 2014, the Guantanamo Bay Detainee Transfer Suspension Act of 2014, the Sanction Iran Safeguard America Act of 2014. If you're interested in any more details, just Google Ted Cruz's resume. There's a whole bunch more stuff on there that may interest you beyond what I feel are the best highlights. You know, when Ted Cruz was in Texas running for senator, he promised his constituents that he would go to DC and fight, among other things, the Obamacare Act and try to defund it. Now, of all the people in the GOP establishment, Ted Cruz is one of the few that stood up in front of Congress to filibuster the funding of Obamacare for 21 hours straight. He was accompanied at times by Republican Senator David Vitter of Louisiana, Mike Lee of Utah, Jeff Sessions of Alabama, Pat Roberts of Kansas, Mike Enzi of Wyoming, James Inhofe of Oklahoma, Jim Reich of Idaho, Marco Rubio of Florida, and Rand Paul of Kentucky. The point is, he promised to go fight Obamacare, and he did. Now, a lot of people say that this was a losing battle from the get-go, so it was only a bunch of show for Ted Cruz to get up there and do this. But I have to ask you something. Is a losing battle still worth fighting? If your family was held hostage and you knew that there was no chance, would you still fight for them? Because right now, this country is being held hostage by a bunch of liberal policies that are destroying it from the core. And we need people to stand up, even if it is a losing battle. If you promise to do something, you go in there and you do it. And we're not getting that from a bunch of other politicians. Now, of the 21 hours that Ted Cruz stood up there and filibustered, what do you think the media focused on? Was it all the great points that Ted Cruz listed off about how horrible Obamacare is and how it's going to destroy our economy? No. They focused on a couple minutes that Ted Cruz took to read his kids Dr. Seuss's Green Eggs and Ham because they were watching on the TV because their dad wasn't home to tuck them in that night. Coincidentally, this is the same type of family man behavior that we're seeing during the debates as well. What you're not seeing on TV is during the debate commercial breaks, Ted Cruz leaves the stage, and instead of talking to the other candidates on stage or talking to the moderators like the other people do, he actually goes out into the crowd and plays with his kids for a couple minutes before the cameras come back on and he needs to be on stage. If anything, the only reason why I would judge Ted Cruz's fatherly behavior is the idea that he would put his kids into the same room as Donald Trump around his foul mouth. You know, something that's really important to me, and maybe you as well, is getting a man of faith into office. I believe truly that there were 3 men of faith on the main stage debates. That would be Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and Dr. Ben Carson. I believe that their faith was steadfast and unwavering. You may feel differently, but I'm personally looking for a constitutionalist that stands on Christian principles because our country was founded on both. Now, seeing that I'm a Ted Cruz supporter, I have to try and balance this out with some of the points that I believe work against Ted Cruz or points that other people have brought up that are bad points for him as well. My biggest concern for a while is that Ted Cruz didn't show up for the audit the Fed vote. That was really troubling for me, and I was hard-pressed to find an answer for him until one of the debates where he said this.
When it comes to the audit the Fed bill, as Rand knows well, I was an original sponsor of the bill. I am strongly supportive of it. It didn't have the votes to pass, and I had commitments to be at a town hall in New Hampshire, but I look forward to signing that bill into law as president and to auditing the Fed and providing needed accountability at the Federal Reserve.
Another objection I get is that Ted Cruz is bought and paid for by Goldman Sachs because his wife Heidi works for Goldman Sachs. Now, people believe that he's going to get into office and suddenly start working for a special interest, as in Goldman Sachs, and doing favors for them. But he's already been senator. He's already had the opportunity to do those types of things, and he hasn't. And if he has, certainly point me in that direction so I can see it myself. But judging a man on actions that you assume he's going to take before he does them it's asinine. It doesn't make any sense. You have to give someone the opportunity. Now, I'm hearing this the most from Donald Trump supporters, and I have a litany list to look at from Donald Trump's past history of reasons why you shouldn't vote for him and liberal actions he's taken in the past. And you're telling me now that he's conservative? Doesn't make any sense. These are also the same Trump supporters that say Ted Cruz is going to take a hold of this special interest or that special interest like Goldman Sachs and cater to them. But Donald Trump, he's his own millionaire, billionaire, or whatever he is, that he's not going to take special interest. I have news for you. If you've been donating to politicians for over 40 years on both sides of the aisle, you're already a politician, you're already an insider. And beyond that, as a business owner, instead of looking for a business owner special interest to guide what you're doing and be bought and paid for by them, he is the business owner. He is the special interest. So instead of having outside influence of special interest, you would want to put a special interest in the presidential chair behind that Oval Office desk. I'll tell you what, if we give Cruz a chance and he gets to be president and he does stuff for Goldman Sachs, look back on this video and comment, and I will eat my words. Over the weekend, between the video that I did on Donald Trump and this one, there were some violent attacks at Donald Trump's rallies. Ted Cruz is starting to take fire because he believes that Donald Trump is partly to blame for that, and even mentioned that his voters are ill-informed. The problem with that news story is that details are conveniently left out by the media, or Trump's team in some facts. You know, that sound clip is played first, but Cruz actually mentioned before that comment that Donald Trump himself said in one of his victory speeches after one of the primaries that he loves the poorly educated, as you can see here.
We won the evangelicals. We won with young. We won with old. We won with highly educated. We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
You know, Donald gave a press conference where he said, to quote him, "I love the poorly educated." Listen, part of it is, I think Donald is taking advantage of his voters, because I understand what they're angry about. But Donald, if you're angry at the corruption of Washington, you don't solve it by supporting someone who has been enmeshed in the Washington corruption for 40 years. And so what is happening, listen, Donald does well with voters who have relatively low information, who are not that engaged, and who are angry, and they see him as an angry voice. Where we are beating him is when voters get more engaged and they get more informed. When they inform themselves, they realize his record. He's what they're angry at. He is the corruption, and if you want someone to stand up to Washington, the only one who has been doing so in this race is me.
Now that you've seen it, I actually have to agree with Cruz. Donald Trump has been playing on the anger and fear of the American people. When you keep on bullying people and protesters at your rallies and throwing out hateful rhetoric and talking about people the way that he does, what do you think the consequences were going to be? Of course you're stirring up anger in the crowds. Of course something is going to happen, especially if protesters come in with your supporters. Donald Trump is specifically stirring the pot to anger the crowd even more, to rally them to his message. I happen to take Ted Cruz's comments even further. A few of my friends that are Trump supporters may have a couple reasons why they're voting for Trump, but for the most part, the people I talk to that are Trump supporters really don't know anything about his policies, they're uninformed, and they're voting out of anger and fear. And to be honest with you, I don't know of anyone that would say that they've made a good decision when they're angry or fearful. Fear and anger are a cocktail combination that you do not want to mess with and make a decision out of. One of the criticisms of Ted Cruz is that he's bland and vanilla, that he doesn't have a personality. Well, I gotta be honest with you, I'm not looking for personality. I'm looking for someone that's going to follow the Constitution as a blueprint for America. What made America great is that the Constitution has limited the rights of the government to infringe upon the people. And the best way to control that situation is to follow the Constitution. The Constitution isn't a Bill of Rights for us. It's a Bill of Rights limiting the government. And he knows that. He is here and he's saying that he's here to serve the people. Where he's raising his hand, giving allegiance to the American people, Donald Trump has the crowds raising their hand, pledging allegiance to voting for him. It's the complete opposite. That's what kings and monarchies do. Ted Cruz knows that he's going to be a servant to the people, and he's trying to represent both them and the Constitution to the best of his ability. You know, I think part of the reason why Donald Trump is doing so well right now is because of his celebrity status. And that's been born of the fact that Obama himself and his wife have been showing up on talk shows like Oprah and Ellen for years. We've gotten to this point in our culture right now where we're looking for celebrities to do things, instead of looking for the types of people that will do their job, keep quiet, and just help the American people out. This isn't a game show anymore, people. This country is in big trouble, and we keep on flushing it down the toilet even further because we keep on putting celebrities in charge of things instead of actually doing what we're supposed to, and look at the candidate and the issues and the rhetoric that's coming from them and voting them in instead. In closing, I have to say this. Ted Cruz's best VP pick at this point in time is the Constitution. He knows every single word of it, and he's known it since he was a teenager. Be sure to click over here to subscribe to my channel, and over here to watch the last 2 videos that I did with Donald Trump and my experience at CPAC. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time when we take a look at Marco Rubio. Swear to God.